Okay, talking about dreams. I first started to dream when I was in primary school, and that dream was trying to make enough money for myself and the family. Because I grew up in a very poor family. My dad was the only sole provider initially, and as we grew older, my mom had to join the workforce to supplement the income. And so, as I became aware of things around when I started going to school, the eyes kind of opened to see what other people are like and how they're living. And I said, well, poverty isn't the norm. There are other people who are quite well off. And so I said, why can't my family be like them? And if you remember the old days of vinyl records, if you ever have a scratch of them, the needle will not move on. You'll be stuck in the rut. And I decided that, well, in terms of wealth, I didn't want my generation and the generation after be stuck in that. And then I decided that I should do something about that. Um, so that caught on in trying to pursue what I want to do in school and thereafter. The difficulty is, of course, I was a late learner, uh, and therefore there are a lot more obstacles than, say, somebody who's better well off. And while I could be envious about that, but it given me the greater determination to do things against the odds. So that built resilience as well, and that focused on trying to do better each year. Eventually got me through to trying to go to university. And by that time, there was a decision to be made. Who's going to finance my fees and all my expenses? And while I tried to save a lot during national service, did tuition and all that, there was always going to be that shortfall. And I even went to apply for a scholarship, not scholarship, study loan. Study loan. I know I wasn't good enough to earn a scholarship, and so I went to apply, and the civil servants who interviewed me and said, "Well, your grades are average, not the best." The big question was, "How are you going to pay us back?" Right? And uh, promises of doing hard work and paying back didn't cut it. And I said, "Okay, I got to find another means of financing myself." And earlier I shared a dream about my dream of my late father, and it so happened that he passed away what was in my second year, and whatever little money that he had from his insurance went towards paying for the rest of my fees, which of course with the consent of my mom. And I was thinking back and said, wow, the insurance policy it took couldn't even cover inflation. And I said, how does that provide for a family, right? But I figured out that's the most he could pay with the premium he had for that insurance policy. Um, so as I graduated eventually, and I was told by my grandmother and say, your dad wanted to become a graduate as well, but he never had the means, even though he graduated from Catholic high school. He had to work, or at least my grandmother forced him to, because nobody else could earn anything. And I remember I said, okay, I should be even more determined to try and fulfill my dream. And so I started work, and all the places I applied to, I ended up in investment banking. And I became a trader of fixed income. And it was all exciting initially. And then success came very early. And I came into my mind the wrong idea that, oh, I did it all by myself. And by the age of 31, I became in one of the banks that hired me to headhunters. I became head of a regional trading desk. And I thought, wow, um, I could do all things by myself. Unfortunately, uh, as you do well, your employer's expectations rise higher, and there's more pressure to do more and earn more money for the bank. So as traders, all we do is trading profits. That's all we earned. And And when you have a bad year, you look terrible. And in most investment banks, as you know, are hire and fire policies. And so sometimes you always got to look behind the back whether you're on a chopping board or not. And uh, and that struggle started to make my dream looking like a nightmare. And say, is this all I signed up for? Um, to try and make money, but at the expense of that, the trade-off was it took up time away from my family. By the time I was married, it took time away from my wife, my children, and that's the time when I started to ask, what's life all about? Is it all about money? And then I had a series of supernatural encounters with God. And there'll be another story I'll tell you if you want to know. And then that turned me around and say, it's not all about money. Life is about relationship with not just God, but with my wife and my children as well, and the community around us. And the test came when I could hear God audibly saying that start small groups meetings in your bank. And I said, God, I got budget to meet. I'm an employee, and to take time off to organize that on a weekly basis means I will struggle to meet the budget. But out of obedience, I did. And because he said, I will take care of your budget, you take care of what I ask you to do. And so as a result, God was faithful. Every year, I more than meet or exceed my budget to employers, doing what he asked me to do, except for 1 year, which was during the Asian financial crisis. And everybody's business was affected. And then my boss asked me, okay, let's work this out, how to pay you a bonus. And he says, show me on your chart that you have actually grew your business pie, which was very easy because everybody else shrunk and I have increased in the pie in percentage terms. And that gave me a bonus as a result of that, right? So I began to learn that God is real, God is faithful. And now I know the dream is not now about income. Yeah, money is important, no doubt, but not as important as relationships with people. And that's something they have to learn all over again. And I had to switch jobs somewhere because I had to spend time with our son, who was a growing teenager at that time. And I was traveling about 60% of my time at work, and my house was beginning to look like a hotel. And so I had to switch jobs to beginning to spend time, taking time off to go to his school for events and so on, and then beginning to know and learn about who this God is all about, right? So that is the now, and then the tomorrow. In according to your topic, what do I look forward to? Is really enough for all my loved ones to be able to live the abundant life that I've lived with God. In other words, the invitation that God has once you have a relationship with Him is an abundant life. So when I had the original dream of money leading to an abundant life, God is telling me, accept the abundant life He's offering through a relationship with Him, and then you have more than enough. And so it's my dream going forward that all my loved ones will get to know Him personally, and then I can be happy to think about eternity with all of them where God is. And that dream that I had, I shared earlier from my late father, I always wondered whether he was ever saved, whether he knows God or not. And he was then a Roman Catholic, so I have no clue because he does all his rituals and so forth. And my interpretation of that dream is that God is telling me that he's saved. Because why would I dream about resurrection? And so it was a very pleasant surprise, and I'm very happy with that. And so going forward, my dream is to get as many people into that full life that all is provided for in God's paradise for eternity. Thank you.